Welcome everybody. It's great to see such a varied group of people. Actually, it's really good to see you all. We thought it was important to talk about the foundation year, which was recently launched by the university. Partly because we are a founding college, if you like, and partly also because we've, as a group and as a community, been very closely involved in the development of the foundation year so far. So I've been the head of house on the board. Sara Owen, who's our one of our admissions tutors, has been there right from the start and is going to talk about that. Alex Pryce is one of our BI fellows and is director of the programme. And we're also joined by Jack Bailey, who last year was our target and access exec on the JCR final year law student and very involved in general in our access programme at college. If I just sort of kick off very briefly, and then I'm going to ask Alex to run through a very sort of an outline of the programme, then come to Sara and then come to Jack and then throw it open. Loads of you, thank you very much, have already put questions in. Please keep doing so. We've got Slido, which I think everybody's got a link to. If you've got a problem with that, if you put something in chat, I know Nicola will put it over into Slido for us, and I'll try and group the questions together so that we get through them all. So thank you very much for all your interest and keep going. I'll just very briefly talk about it from my point of view, which is really that I think widening access to a Cambridge education, and probably even, in some ways even more importantly to the wide Cambridge experience, is absolutely core to us as a college. And therefore, from the beginning of the conversations about a possible foundation year, it was obvious that FITS would want to be part of it, because for us it's the latest iteration really. It's not instead of other programmes and other work that we're involved in. It's a new addition and perhaps a very helpful new symbol almost of what it is we're trying to do. So we've been really clear that we're supportive of it. The first students will be coming not next year, but the year after. And Alex, I'm going to turn to you so you can just talk through the sort of aspirations and the outline of the course. And then, as I say, I'll go on to Sara. So over to you, Alex.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sally. I mean, you say an overview. I had prepared an hour-and-a-half presentation.
Oh, lovely.
I will condense that down to the salient points for the purpose of this audience. But at its essence, the foundation year is a free and fully funded stepping stone to Cambridge for those who have experienced educational disadvantage. And exactly what educational disadvantage means, we can go into later, but it takes many different forms. And it's things that effectively stop people reaching the level of attainment at the point that they apply that would make them a competitive applicant for Cambridge, and they may still have high potential. So from Michaelmas 2022, FITS will be among the first colleges welcoming 50 students across the entire university, and those will be those who've experienced this disadvantage in the past. And that means that they won't have reached the level of attainment that most of our undergraduates reach, which is a minimum of A star, AA, A level or equivalent. So the students will have met certain criteria to be eligible. So that could be things like they haven't had access to the right qualifications or the right subjects. It could also be things like they might have been in care, they might be a refugee, they might have had health issues that cause them to miss a lot of school. So there's lots of different factors that play into that, and it's quite a holistic view of what disadvantage can mean for an individual. And they will also be reaching attainment level that is lower than standard undergraduates. So their A-level attainment will be BBB at A-level or equivalent. So it's not rock bottom, but it's certainly lower than the kind of standard Cambridge direct entry. And they will also have an interest in continuing at Cambridge in courses in the arts, humanities and social sciences. So courses like law, HSBS, ASNAC, classics, English, history, all of the courses that fall within those subject disciplines. It is a really exciting opportunity. It's a one-year full-time course, so it's much more sustained and in-depth than some of the other outreach activities that the university has done in the past, like summer schools or school outreach. And it is also a qualification and award in and of itself. So it is a certificate of higher education, which is a first-year undergraduate level qualification, and it will therefore be assessed and awarded. They will leave with a qualification regardless of whether they stay at Cambridge. And they will have the chance to progress into those subjects at Cambridge, as well as receiving support in receiving offers from other universities as well, to make sure that they have all the options they want on the table. I could share loads more detail about what exactly the curriculum is and all the ins and outs of the admissions process. I personally love them, but I appreciate not everyone loves the amount of detail that I have. But suffice to say, every aspect of this has been really carefully considered and weighed up within the project board, where Sally and Sara and I have done a lot of this, and within various other committees in the university, including the governing body here at FIT. And I think, we are confident at this stage that it is a step towards opening Cambridge up to these students, and that it is just something that's really quite exciting for the future. And that's really all I'll say for now.
Thanks, Alex. I think the other thing we'll do is make sure that after we finish, we'll make sure that there's a link to the website so that all the work that you've done so far and your detailed presentation will indeed be available to all. Sara, do you want to fill us in a bit on? I mean, you've been there from the bit to beginning, or the start of the conversation.
Yeah, I just want to say to begin with that I'm so proud that Fitzwilliam is so involved in the foundation year. Sally said it speaks to the core of our belief in widening participation, so I think it's incredibly important. Yeah, so I've been an admissions tutor here for 6 years now. Almost as soon as I started the role, we started conversations about the possibility of doing such a year. In 2016, I became part of a small working group that started to explore the possibility. There were 3 of us to start with, and then we started gradually adding to that group. And so after sort of 5 years of working on this project, I'm really delighted, obviously, that it's now been launched. And I really do believe that this project is simply about giving those who've had educational disadvantage, but who do have the academic potential to succeed in Cambridge, an opportunity they otherwise wouldn't be able to take up. So yeah, I worry that there's been quite a lot in the press and quite a lot of reaction saying we're lowering standards and this is not right. I don't believe we're doing that at all. So at Fitzwilliam, obviously, widening participation is at the core of what we do. We take pride in assessing all of the applications that we receive contextually. And that's not just actually because we care about widening participation. It's actually because we want to admit students who have the greatest potential. And I think that the foundation year is also about the students with the greatest potential. And it's quite interesting to me to see that as the number of widening participation flags that our students have risen and the proportion of state school has risen, our results have actually improved. So that also shows that we're not lowering standards by doing widening participation. I'll just say one more thing before we hand over to Jack, and that's to say that at the moment and for the past few years, we have been admitting in proportion to the proportions who actually apply, but the applications are still not representative. Yeah. So this year, for example, we got about 72% state school from our home applications. So we're working really hard to try to increase those applications and to increase applications from widening participation students as well. We've got a targeted approach. We're doing lots of study days for state school students. We do essay competitions, which often gets individuals in schools which are not really sort of engage with us. But we're obviously really grateful for any other ideas that people have, and we're constantly open to new ideas.
Thank you, Sara. Yeah. Thank you. And Jack, this from sort of the students' point of view, I guess, on the foundation year in particular and access in general.
Yeah, so as Sally mentioned, in January, I stepped down from my role as Target and Access Executive, having done it for a year on the JCR. I'm a final year law student here, but I come from Rhyl in North Wales. I consider myself, the classic access kid, basically. I'm here on full Cambridge bursary. Rhyl is the worst town in Wales in terms of deprivation indexes. So I know what this foundation year has to offer. So, I just want to start by saying thank you for having me speak on this, because I think it's a topic that is really, really important. Obviously, while I've been at Access, work has always had my heart and attention. So, like I say, it's a great privilege to chat about it. think it's often said, and maybe to the point of cliche, that education is a great empowerer of people and the most effective tool in promoting social mobility. But I happen to agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think that the foundation year has the potential to be a really, really potent tool in achieving this. It specifically targets those who've experienced a raft of personal, systemic, and circumstantial disadvantages that ultimately result in a material educational disadvantage, as Alex mentioned. The list of eligibility criteria is online on that link, so I won't go through it in any depth. But I will say, I think it casts a wide net to catch a variety of people from a variety of backgrounds, and suitably so. I think it's right that it does that. What the foundation year offers, in my view, is a life-changing opportunity. And I don't think it's any exaggeration to put it in those terms. Already, a Cambridge education has the power to change people's lives and make them socially mobile, as it were. There can be no denying that having a Cambridge education is a significant privilege that affords people opportunities that they perhaps would never have otherwise had. I've seen that for myself in some of the things that I've had since I've been studying in Cambridge that I really do not believe would have happened to me if I didn't come to Cambridge. So I'm fully aware of the significant impact that Cambridge has had on my life, but can have on other people's too. So as far as the foundation year goes, I think it's going to have a real multiplying effect on that. And it's going to take that and push it even further, because it's taken those who've had the least privilege in their lives up to this point and gives them a golden opportunity. And I just want to really, really emphasize, as Alex said, it's a free, fully funded year in Cambridge as a prelude to an undergraduate degree. And I think it really is worth just stopping and taking a moment to think about that. Not only are there no tuition fees, but students receive a scholarship that matches what they would ordinarily get from their student finance authority, and they also get the ordinary levels of Cambridge bursary support that they would get as a full-time student. I think that is phenomenal. I've had a little snoop at some of the other foundation years that are on offer from other universities, and suffice to say, the financial investment and support and commitment to students does not even come close. It's abundantly clear to me that students benefiting from the foundation year have their financial worries completely removed. And I think that is wonderful. And it serves as an exemplary model of what education can and should be about. And I'm immensely proud that Cambridge, and FITS in particular, is playing such a leading role in that. I referred earlier to the privilege that comes with studying at Cambridge. And for many disadvantaged students, the institutionalized privilege that Cambridge is steeped in does also bring with it substantial difficulties. So it can present a massive culture shock in a multitude of ways, whether that's the general affluence of the area, the old and large buildings as a classic one. But if you come from a really, really deprived urban environment, when you walk down King's Parade for the first time, it's a little bit daunting sometimes because you've never seen anything like that in your life. You do not know that. That is not part of your background. And it can feel quite on top of you at times. And obviously, not least, the shift in academic intensity when you come to what is the best university in the country and one of the best universities in the world. You might have come from a school, a state comprehensive that's in special measures with 35 kids in the class. You're not used to, one-on-one, two-on-one supervisions where you really get them pushed to your outer limits. It's a complete change of situation. So while there is significant privilege, it brings with it significant difficulty. And again, what I think is so great about the foundation year is it offers an opportunity for students to adjust to that and really warm up. And, it's a bit like dipping your toes into the bath almost, and to get used to what Cambridge is like before you start your full-time undergraduate degree. So when you do start it, you excel and you do yourself justice in terms of what you can achieve. So just to finish up, I think that the foundation year will make great strides in tackling imposter syndrome and similar feelings in Cambridge's most disadvantaged students. I think it will equip students excellently for pursuing a Cambridge undergraduate degree. But most of all, I am beyond proud that FITS is playing a leading role in the foundation year programme, and once again, doing itself proud and fulfilling our college's motivation as a socially mobile, access motivated college.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to go to questions. There's quite a variety. Some are quite detailed, some are clearly from from teachers, maybe alum teachers, I don't know, and some are more general. So I'll try and group them up a bit, and we'll share them around. And I think our senior tutor is on the call as well, in which case I'm also going to go to him at some point. Paul, just to wake you up in case you have your cup of tea. Can I start with some of the quite specific ones, actually, which I think would be good to look at first. And actually, when we launched this was a theme that came through quite strongly, which is there a danger that people will try and abuse this route into Cambridge? And how are we going to make sure that doesn't happen? I'm actually going to go to Sara first, because Sara, well, partly I'm looking at you, Sara, because you know about this, or you know about this in general in applications, and therefore, in a sense, I think if you say something general about it, and Alex can be quite specific about how the entrance work is being thought through. But if I go to you first, Sara.
Okay, so when we get an application, we get a lot of information about the individual who is applying. So we get information which is personal information, personal markers, whether they're free school meals, for example. We get information on their postcode, so the kind of area they live in, whether it's an area which is flagged for index of multiple deprivation, which will be one of the flags that we will be using. And we get a lot of information on the candidate's school. So I think it would be very difficult for somebody to sort of fly under our radar and come from a very advantaged background and come into the foundation year. But Alex will have more detail about exactly how we're going to do this admissions process.
Thank you. Alex, do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. So, I mean, one of the things that's a worry about this, particularly when it represents such a significant investment in the individual students, is that, yeah, people game the system and we end up with students who are not really deserving of the place for reasons of educational disadvantage. And the issue that we've had in developing the model is there are lots of things that we would like to include because the research shows that they have an impact on attainment, but some of them there's no necessarily a way of proving it. So for something like becoming homeless in education, that has a really big impact on people. But how do you prove? No one gets a letter that says I have been officially made homeless, and that's really quite uncommon. So in devising the model, what we've actually done is we've devised a model where they have to meet 2 of 3 categories, and that means that they have to meet one of the categories which we can definitely verify. So the first category is the individual characteristics. So that's things like the medical issues, refugee status, you're being a young carer. Some of those things you can prove. If you're a refugee, you have a letter that says I have indefinite leave to remain. And some of them you might be able to get a letter of support from your GP, but some of them it's always going to be difficult to prove without, beyond all measure. You could get a letter from your school or a reference from someone who knows you, but all of that could be abused. But so that's only one of the categories. The second category is family characteristics, which is effectively a household income measure. And that is something that we can independently verify through, P60 of parents or through evidence that someone is a benefits claimant. So that's something that we can rely on. And then the third measure is basically a school or college characteristic. And again, that is information, and we're only using the information that we can independently verify, like school college attainment levels. We have that data, in school inspection rating. That information is publicly available. So the model is being designed to be as flexible and inclusive as possible, but also to allow us some confidence that we are accepting people who genuinely have experienced that disadvantage. And that eligibility is actually a gateway to consideration. We don't assess from the point of being eligible. We're not comparing disadvantage, like this person's had a worse time than this person, because it's completely impossible to compare people's experiences, and they affect people in different ways. But that becomes the kind of the gateway to consideration, and then from that point, the admissions process is, to all intents and purposes, quite similar to the standard admissions process. There's a written assessment that's quite hard to cheat on, and there's an interview that, even if you have lied in every other part of your application to that date, the tutors will find you out on the day. So that's kind of the way that we've tried to devise it, so that eligibility first, then academic suitability.
Thank you, Alex. Very, very clear, very clear. When Alex said we'll find you out on the day, that is not to say that we give people a hard time when we do admissions. We try and make people feel comfortable, but we also want to make sure that people are genuinely eligible for the foundation year. Can I just ask? We've got some specifics in, I think, from teachers in schools. So from one person, my school's a high performing school, certainly from a value added perspective. Would this potentially count against my likely applicants? And there was another similar one. How should schools go about identifying the most suitable students for the programme from an academic perspective? So I think you've explained the gateway very clearly. So academically, who should, how do schools spot the one or two students who really should potentially be encouraged to look at this? Let me go to you first, Alex.
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to the kind of our people who go to good schools disadvantaged in this programme, in some ways they may be, because if you go to a good school, you have experienced an element of advantage in attending that. But on the other hand, because it's 2 of 3 categories, if someone has comes from a very low income household, or they've been on benefits, they're eligible for free school meals, then they are still eligible. And there are lots of very good schools that are in very economically deprived areas, and therefore would still have lots of eligible candidates. So it's not simply a case that it's school or nothing. There's the income measure as well. And I suspect every school in the UK will have students who could be eligible for this programme. And then when it comes to how do you identify the candidates, it is one of those things, it's about identifying maybe they could have been on a good trajectory up until Key Stage 3 and then something happened and they've fallen right down. That might be something. It could also be something like, who are the students that when you talk to them, you think, they're really sparky and good and they would be good, but then their exam results are just not reflecting that, or you can tell that their home learning environment has been really challenging and that's impacting their ability. So I think it is one of those things, it's quite personal, and it could be data, it could be following them through their journey, but it could also be simply just knowing that candidate who you can see has that potential but isn't evidencing it. That's kind of the ideal candidate that we're looking for, someone who isn't showing their true ability.
Sara, can I ask you one about I think it's and possibly explain the nature of the course a little bit more as well, because this person is asking, if a student takes the foundation year, is he or she then committed to studying for the original subject? What if they've got a change of mind? And of course, that actually is one of the issues around the foundation year, is to give some scope for a breadth, isn't it? So do you want to explain a bit more about that?
Absolutely. So from the very beginning, we decided that what we wanted was not to have people come in deciding, from the very beginning, for example, that they want to do law, which is what we get an awful lot of widely foundation students are applying for. But give them the opportunity to experience lots of different subjects. Because from our point of view, actually, any Cambridge degree is going to be really good at preparing them for the world of work. I'm a classicist. Lots of my classicists become lawyers in the end. They go out and do all kinds of really kind of interesting things. So what we wanted to do was to get the students seeing what really interested them and made them passionate, because you are best at the things that really interest you and make you passionate. So what we've got is a system whereby there are various different sort of elements. You can work with text, work with material culture, work with data and statistical stuff, and work with languages. You get to choose various sort of aspects of this, and you will get sort of tasters of lots of different subjects and lots of different work within the different subjects in these areas. And then gradually you will start to sort of narrow down your choices of subject.
Great.
So by the time you get to the sort of second term, you'll have maybe a couple or 3 choices of subject that are still in play for when you're making UCAS applications. So that's sort of the idea of it. And we were determined that we weren't going to continually limit students who had not had the ability to, or not had the schooling which enabled them to get access to lots of these different subjects, and therefore didn't really know they existed.
Thank you very much, Sara. Can I go on to a package of questions really about experience at college? And I'm going to ask Paul to join us and pick up some of these. And I'm also going to ask for your perspective too, Jack, actually, because I think it'd be helpful. So the questions I sort of want to take as a group for you to just answer in focusing on whichever you want are, what level of pastoral support are these students going to get? To what extent or how are they going to be integrated overall into FIT's college life? And a very specific one is, how are you going to make sure they're not kind of picked on, looked down on, discriminated against? I mean, I actually think that we'd be very conscious of that actually at FIT, but it's a very, very good question that's come in. So can I go to you first, Paul? Because as sort of senior tutor, you've got the look across the whole thing, and then I'll come to Jack for any specifics as well. Paul.
Thanks. It sounds like my dinner call come at exactly the same moment. It's lovely, isn't it? Thanks. Sorry about that. Can I say first, you know, I'm really excited about the project as well. I haven't really been involved in its development, except, as I think Alex was saying, you know, our college and other colleges have had good opportunities, actually several opportunities to participate and to kind of feedback on early versions of the plan and so on. So I think it's developed with colleges, but although I haven't been in any way part of organising it, I'm as Jack said, you know, absolutely delighted that FITS is part of the first group of colleges taking part in this. Those questions are really good ones, and of course, you know, as Sally said, we're mindful of the well-being of students who join it. It's an exciting thing, but it's brand new for Cambridge. But you know, FITS this is very much in keeping with the ethos that that is kind of the day-to-day reality. I think at FITS. Things aren't always easy, obviously, and we shouldn't be complacent about that. But I don't think that we expect there to be any kind of attitude of hostility from others within the college community. Obviously, if that arose, we would deal with it. But that's not what we expect to happen. But the perception of the students themselves is a slightly different question. So that is why, and because of thinking about how people will feel coming in as a new kind of student to a college, that's why the organisers have, you know, decided to make sure that there were, you know, a substantial group, not a huge number, but, you know, five or so students at any college who are participating in it, so that, you know, we're not talking about people individually isolated within colleges. They will, of course, receive pastoral support, the same as all other students, and they will have a director of studies, as other students will, looking after their particular course for that year. Socially, you know, I would say that you know, people's of course, everyone here knows this. I mean, the social life of students revolves only partly around the academic work that they do and the cohort that they'll be working with in their course, and that will be a source of support and strength, no doubt, but all the other activities that they'd be able to participate in alongside other students, the sporting activities, the music or the drama, all of those things that they will be interested in themselves, they'll do just as any other student will do. So in many respects, you know, I suspect that the challenges that these students face when they arrive in Cambridge will be mostly quite similar to the challenges that other incoming students from various different backgrounds might face as freshers in their first year. So we're pretty well geared up in college communities, aren't we? The scale that we work to offer support in those contexts. I don't know if I've hit the various different questions.
Yeah, no, I think you have. Thank you very much. Jack, why don't you talk about sort of how you think it'll work in terms of the student community?
Yeah, so obviously I won't say much about pastoral support because obviously Paul is king of pastoral support as senior tutor. So, but I think talking more about sort of the integration and the sort of the worries about discrimination, I think I probably can talk about. So in terms of integration, obviously I mentioned that I was on the JCR for the last year, and obviously a big part of the role of JCR is to plan Freshers Week and to take care of student welfare. So I guess I am talking pastoral actually, but from a student perspective, students providing pastoral support for other students. And when we've ever done that, we've never split it up before of you're an access kid, you're not an access kid, so you can come to this event, you can't. We do offer, we have an access role, obviously, which provides specific access support, but we've never divvied up events going, you know, well, excuse me, before you turn up to this BOP, what's your household income? You know, it doesn't work like that. So in terms of how we would see it as a JCR and how the current JCR would see it, they're just another member of the JCR community as far as it goes. So they go to all of the same events. They're welcome to join the community because they are part of the community. They've earned a place in college. So why would you not treat them as you would anyone else in college? So in terms of integration, that would be automatic. They would never, wouldn't ever bear consideration. And as for sort of a worry about how other students would see them, I think the same applies where, you know, like I say, I come from Rhyl. I have friends who went to some of, you know, the most prestigious private schools in the country, have very, very different backgrounds to mine, but we're quite good friends because, believe it or not, not all of the stereotypes are true for working class kids or upper class children, as it happens. It is a massive melting pot university, especially in the college system, and obviously all alumni here will know that it's a huge melting pot, and you know, you are unified by being students of Fitzwilliam College, regardless of what you've done before or will go on to do after. You're here as Fitzwilliam students. In my experience, there's never been tolerance of bullying or looking down on other students, and I really, really cannot see how that will change. So God forbid if there ever was instances of people being looked down upon, I trust that even within the student community, that would get called out and stamped out instantly. And obviously I trust that college would also deal with that appropriately. But as far as being concerned about it, I personally wouldn't be. I think it's a fantastic opportunity.
Thank you, Jack. I'm going to come to Sara, I think, on this one. Will the scheme, a good question, will the scheme reduce chances for applicants who haven't been on the foundation year?
I personally don't think that it will. At the moment, the scheme is relatively small because it's a pilot. There are only 5 students who would be admitted to Fitzwilliam in any one year. And normally we would give perhaps between 170 and 185 offers for 140 places. So 5 places actually is in the noise, really, in terms of those kinds of numbers. So I really don't think that we're going to be in a situation where we are choosing between foundation year and other candidates at all.
Thank you. And why is the scheme restricted to humanities subjects? I'm coming to you, Alex, on this. Why is the scheme restricted to humanities? Is that going to be looked at in any way in the future?
Yeah, I think this is probably the number one question I get most places I go. It's great to hear, because I think it suggests that there is
our admissions on science is laughing at that point too.
Yeah, and I think that's good, because it suggests that there's so much confidence in the programme that people want me to do another one. But I think so. There are a number of reasons why we've gone for arts, humanities, and social sciences in the first instance. One of the reasons is that it is. When it comes to coming up with a course of study that the students are actually studying, there is more in common across many of these subjects, which means that we can keep the largest possible number of course options available to the students on progression, and that is one of the reasons. Another reason is that there are a number of subjects within the remit, looking at Sara with classics, that are not typically things that students have been exposed to in the state sector in general, or there are subjects in there where the teaching, the availability of the qualifications, like in modern languages, in certain parts of the state sector, has also reduced in recent years. So that's another good reason for using arts, humanities, and social sciences. And in terms of a kind of STEM extension, it's very much like on the table. No one has made a final decision either way. We have sort of been thinking on the project board that while we like the idea of it very much, we also do need to sort of see how this goes before we commit any more to it, because the course is it's expensive to run. Devising a STEM curriculum is not without its challenges, particularly if you keep the kind of qualifications that you're accepting quite broad, because one of the other things about the foundation year is that you could enter with a combination of BTECs and A-levels, for example. In STEM, where the knowledge is quite cumulative, that could be quite challenging to devise a course that could respond to those needs. So there are certainly things that we need to consider, but I think there's certainly appetite and interest in it, but we do need to get some evaluation of the first cohort of the foundation year before we can truly decide whether it's a direction we want to take. Although I will also say that we are looking at other things in STEM as well. So and there are already lots of other outreach programs, like programs to support further maths for students who can't do it in school. So there are lots of other things and things coming down the pipeline that I can't reveal yet, that are also helping with the issues as they relate to STEM.
Thank you, Alex. And a broader question, which actually I'll kick off on, and I'm going to come to Sara. How does the foundation year sit alongside Fitz's other work on access? What else would you like to do that isn't currently happening? The answer to that is it is another part of a broadening out. In terms of what else we'd like to do, frankly, so much. Because I think one of the things we were a group of us were talking several times this week, really. We're very conscious that we want to go down into the school system. We want to go up in terms of supporting students more when they are at college. We need to go in both directions. So one of our problems, as Sara commented earlier on today, is that we deal with the funnel that we have of students that apply. We really want to get more students from the state sector and from more disadvantaged backgrounds to apply to the college. Because we deal with the people who apply. That's at the moment what we can do. We therefore are really interested to see if we can do more work with perhaps year 12s or even earlier in schools who've got a real interest to try and encourage more of their pupils. We'd love to be able to do summer schools that reach some of those pupils. We'd love to be able to get some of our students here earlier, the freshers here earlier, to get them more prepared and settled in a sense before the term starts. And I think we're collectively particularly conscious that with COVID, the gap between students who've had good schooling and students who've had not very good schooling in the last year, the gap's got much, much bigger. And so we're particularly aware that we've got students who will be arriving who will have had a really rough time. So we're very keen to try and get them here earlier. We're keen to try and expand our approach to study skills, because one of the things that can be really hard with students when they get here is that gap between, you know, how do you read a book quickly and even more, how do you read 4 quickly when you've got an essay to prepare? And we're doing some work on study skills in college. We'd like to do more of it. And then we also would like to do more on really supporting students and mentoring them throughout their college life, but also preparing them for life afterwards. So we've got quite a big menu that we want to develop over the coming period, and we will want to get alumni in particular involved in helping us in a variety of ways on that. So that's my starter, really. Sara, that's my little list. Do you want to add?
Absolutely. I mean, when we're talking about mentoring students who are still at school, I think is really important, and we're looking into ways that we can do that. And I know the JCR are really interested in doing more of that. And I think that's been very successful. Actually, we've had a scheme for the last 3 years, mentoring WP students through their sort of final months of school before their A-levels, after they've got an offer. And that's had an amazing effect, I think, in terms of just keeping people feeling that this is a place they want to come to, because that's sometimes the problem that we have. You know, you give somebody an offer and then they're too scared to take it up. So, you know, all of those kinds of things have to play in, I think. Personally, you know, we do a huge amount, and I know I think Kat's here, our SLO, who does an enormous amount of work with schools. She's done a lot of work with underrepresented ethnicities as well this year. There's been quite obviously a big expansion online, which like most colleges caught us on the hop in March, but we've tried to sort of put a lot of the facilities, a lot of the sort of study days and things like that we would have had online. I personally want to go earlier, so I'm going back to year 6, not just going to GCSE, because in my experience that's where the problem often starts, that kids at primary school think, you know, they think that anything's possible, and the moment they hit secondary school, that's when you start to get peer pressure and people not anymore thinking that they can actually achieve in the way that a lot of these kids are capable of doing. So I have had a little bit of work with local primary schools, but I would really like to expand that out and get them coming to the college and then follow up.
Yeah.
As we do in our sort of Kent Academy schemes that some people might know about, which is about mentoring people from year 9, but I'd like to start far earlier.
Thanks, Sara. Jack, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, and actually, funny enough, Sara's fed in really well there into what I wanted to say. In terms of like dealing with the funnel we have, it's almost a circular problem, really. But I think fundamental to increasing outreach is having role models. That is the most important thing.
Yes.
When people have a relatable inspiration, they are far, far more likely to pursue that path. No, it's all well and good having a state school head of 6 turn around to a child at the beginning of year 13, end of year 12, say, I think you can go to Cambridge. And they go, well, you know, whatever, you're just saying that. But it's one of the things that I was really keen to try and do when I had my role before it was torpedoed by COVID was get people going back to their schools. Because if your head of 6 can, you know, have an assembly or something and go, you can go to Cambridge and look, and here's Jack who did from this school or so on, or you know, various examples, and you can present somebody who went to that school, faced those, you know, challenges or disadvantages and went and did it, and look at what they're doing now. That has such a large impact and a far, far more positive impact on students to really push them and make them believe in themselves. And as far as Sara says about going earlier, I agree. I'm not going to derail this by chatting about Seren, but it's a Welsh Government initiative.
No, you're not, because you'll go on and on and on.
But basically, they very recently have introduced a programme that takes it right the way back to year 9, identifying those who are able and pushing them on to achieve what they can. So it's about that early stage intervention and pushing really, really hard.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Yeah, no, and I think your point about existing students going back is really, really important, and it's such an obvious thing for us to try and move forward on. I'm just going to get Paul to answer another one, actually, which, although this is related to the foundation year, it's probably useful for you to answer in broader terms as well, which is what happens to students who turn out not to be up to the course? Because in a sense, you know, that's always going to happen occasionally. I don't think we think there's any reason it's going to happen more with these students than any other, because we select so carefully across the piece. But do you want to pick up that general topic?
Yeah, thank you. I think it might be that Alex should speak to the issue with the course itself, because perhaps it would be better to do that, and then I'm very happy to come back in general terms about the college, just because I don't want to say this in the wrong way, but I think it's, yeah, well, maybe Alex should. Let me not then.
Okay, I will come back to you, Alex.
Okay. Yeah, so I think obviously, yeah, it's a concern. We worry about that not only because it impacts the student, they are unhappy and they have not succeeded in achieving their goals, and also it's not good for the programme because it doesn't look good for us, it doesn't look good for the people that pay for the programme, it doesn't look good for the university. There are all sorts of risks associated with it. So you know, one side of it is, of course, having a robust submissions process to try and make sure that we do get candidates that can succeed. The other thing within the course is actually framing different outcomes positively. So with the foundation year, obviously we hope that students will want to progress to Cambridge. We hope that they will reach the level of attainment on the course that means that they can remain at Cambridge and progress into a degree subject. But we also are supporting them in making UCAS applications to other universities and framing them positively as well, because going to another university is also a good outcome for a student, and especially if that's a higher tariff university than they would have got into the previous year. Of course, as with all students, there is a chance that the students will you know, be unhappy. Something could happen in their personal life that impacts their ability to study, and therefore they fall back. There are all those things that could happen, but I think, you know, while these students have experienced some of these things potentially in the past, because that could be some of the eligibility criteria, there's no direct link to saying that they're definitely going to experience the same things again, or that they will be unable to cope with them if they have coped with them in the past. So I think, you know, there's no evidence that these students are any more likely to have mental health issues during the course than any other student, but obviously we will be supporting them as best we can. A lot of that responsibility in some ways does sit with the college, because the college has that role, but also within the foundation year they will have foundation year teaching associates that will be doing the teaching, and as with all things at Cambridge, the amount of contact time that you have with people doing the teaching means that quite often issues can be caught early, and of course they have full access to all the other university facilities as well, like the counselling service, if they need it. But yeah, certainly from a college point of view, then back to Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks very much. So I'm glad. Thanks very much, Alex. I'm glad you said that. And it seemed to me, this is one of the aspects when I said before that the college has fed back on this. It seemed to me really important, actually, that different potential outcomes are framed positively within the program, because it's not in anyone's interest. Clearly, it's not in any student's interest or in the college's interests for somebody to continue on to Tripos if that's not the suitable course for them. And that could be for lots of different reasons. Could be purely academic reasons in one or two cases, but it's more likely to be because of the interest, as Sara put it earlier on. People succeed best in things which they're passionate about, and somebody may discover, quite reasonably, somebody really brilliant might discover during the course of this year that actually they're passionate about something which is not best studied at Cambridge. Nothing wrong with that, and there needs to be a successful and respectable route to those courses elsewhere from the end of this program. I think in general terms, the difficulties in personal issues that arise for people, they arise for all students and for all of us from time to time, and particularly perhaps at that age. Things arise, so occasionally things happen, and the college is in a position to offer close support and to be alongside people who are going through difficulties and who might therefore not be firing on all cylinders, let's say academically, for a period of their time as students. Talking about undergraduates as well here, but it's also about kind of acknowledging the reality of your situation for a period of time and not being too frustrated if, let's say, you're not firing up to the first class result that you hoped for in your first year, but knowing that you're playing a longer game than that. So hopefully the directors of studies, the tutors, and also very much as Jack said, the student body and friends around are offering that kind of perspective for students throughout their time. Yeah. So that people are working towards lifelong objectives, not just ones over a term or a year. And yes, there are a small number of cases at Cambridge, smaller than in most other universities, as we know, but small number of cases where, for one reason or another, people don't complete the course. And in some of those cases, it's just very sad circumstances. In others, it's because there is something more suitable and better that somebody chooses to do, and we want to be supportive in those cases too.
Thanks, Paul. Sorry, Sara.
Sorry, I just want to emphasise the fact that we're actually giving them a qualification at the end of this. So I think that there will be hopefully a small number of people, but there will be some people who decide that Cambridge isn't for them and they find somewhere else which there is for them, and they're happy to go there. So I think this is something that we offer that lots of other places don't. That qualification aspect is really important. I mean, I'm a tutor as well, and I've dealt with a handful of students who come into Cambridge and find that it's not for them, or find that the course goes too quickly, or that it's not quite the course that they really wanted to do. And it's quite possible for people happily to go somewhere else if they find that it's not for them. So I don't think we should always see it as a negative if they do that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. A couple of rather more technical ones, and I should say any of the things that we don't cover properly, I'm sure Alex will pick them up and make sure that they're answered on her sort of FAQs or whatever in terms of the foundation year website. But how would applicants for the foundation year be assessed compared to conventional applicants? Would they sit the same sort of tests? And I take that really, and also would we, how would we assess applicants who've taken foundation year certificate of higher education courses from other universities? So maybe what would be useful is to say a little bit more actually about the admissions process and how that's going to be done. I'll start with you, Alex.
Sure. I mean, I should say that while the programme has been launched, some of these things are still live issues. We're still, we are still working on the admissions process. And in fact, FITS recently received from my office an admissions handbook that outlines exactly how the admissions process works. And one of the things that's been suggested in that is effectively, the scoring system, the selection criteria, and the form of a pre-interview written assessment. And the idea with that is that, we could provide a written assessment that includes different elements so that students can choose the element that most closely fits with their past academic experience, whether that's more in social sciences or more in the arts, and also that that they will be interviewed, but the scoring for the interview will obviously be different because this is a different course. So just as there is kind of a sort of range of practice across different subjects in terms of exactly what they're looking for, the foundation year is also targeted particularly to things that we need. But in general, actually, the principles behind it are quite similar to what we look for. So, potential for academic communication, potential for deeper learning and thinking skills, and also some indicators that research indicates particularly help with foundation year learning, which are things like self-efficacy, autonomy, and motivation to study. Those are a lesser part, but they there's research that shows that they can help on that. And when it comes to the admissions process, the college is kind of primary in that in a lot of ways. They're working as a collaborative admissions panel, which is different from the standard admissions, but that does mean that that we have the combined expertise in many ways of all the colleges that are participating as well, which is a great thing. And I think from the admissions point of view, it's a little bit of a watch this space. The handbook is out, so I can't be drawn. The handbook is what I think we should do based on a working group that did admissions, and we discussed it at length. But obviously, the individual colleges have to feed in themselves as well. So that's kind of a live issue.
Right. Well, Sara and Robert will lead us on that, I'm sure. How will the qualification be recognised by other universities? So you've been clear. I mean, Sara, you were clear that there is a qualification at the end of the foundation year. We obviously hope the majority are likely to move then onto a tripos, but how will it be recognised by other universities? What do we know about that?
Yeah, so most universities accept Cert HEs. Even Cambridge would accept a Cert HE, but the question is to do with the relevance to the course that you want to study. So just as you can't do a maths degree with humanities A levels, you couldn't go on to medicine with a Cert HE in arts, humanities, and social sciences. The only thing I guess that is a little bit frustrating about it is most universities don't provide a lot of information about the way that they accept Cert HEs. So probably the candidates are going to have conversations with the admissions teams, and we will have to help facilitate those conversations by, for example, providing a pack that tells them what exactly the modules are on the course and what this student is doing. That comes through the UCAS reference as well, but it is a recognised award. It is the level above A level, so there's absolutely no reason why any good university would say no. And I have had some conversations with Russell Group admission specialists, and I have had no evidence so far that anyone would have a problem with it. We just need to make sure that we provide them with the information they need on exactly what the student is studying and how they're being assessed, so that they can have confidence that this is acceptable for admission to them.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a very technical one. I don't know who's going to answer this one. Cambridge is reviewing all the arts, humanities, tripos courses. How will the foundation year feed into that review? Who'd like that one?
I feel like that's probably one for me.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I mean, certainly I'm aware of ongoing reviews. The university is in a constant state of some kind of review of itself, and I think that's a good thing. The foundation year, obviously to this point, just as we've had the colleges feeding in at various points and being consulted, we have been working closely with the School of Arts and Humanities, the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, and representatives of the individual faculties and departments within those schools. So we are aware of what's going on. Until we know what's happening there and what the timescale for any changes would be, we can't change the foundation year to meet that. But certainly, if there are changes coming down the line that would affect the onward progression subjects, then of course we would have to make adjustments to the course to meet that. But I think I'm not aware of anything that worries me immediately about that, about the work that I've done so far and having to unpick it. if there were changes, perhaps actually some of the work that we've been doing on the foundation year and how you devise a curriculum that is multidisciplinary and how you devise a curriculum that meets the needs of people with different types of qualifications. Some of that thinking is actually quite helpful from a general teaching and learning point of view for wider Cambridge, not just in the arts and humanities, right across all the subjects.
Thank you. And then there's a group of questions broadly about why only 50 students, why only half the colleges. In fact, it's fewer than half the colleges. I think the answer to all of those sorts of questions is this is a pilot, and in the sense that we're trying it out. There were actually more colleges wanted to get involved than there were opportunities to do so at the moment. I mean, the only thing that I think it's fair to say the three of us were pretty determined about is that we felt if we'd been sitting on the board, then it was absolutely, we were adamant that FitzWilliam was going to be one of the first ones to sign up. And we would have been fairly fed up if we were told we had to wait. So, but I think it is, there's a whole variety of questions here, and I think it is very much watch this space. We want to see how this works in comparison to other forms of access work that's happening. And a few of you have commented on the chat about the need to start early. So you're obviously generally clear and supportive about the fact that opening up access has to start early. And I mean, certainly I know primary schools where all the teachers put their university on the door as a very early, just subliminal message that university is what happens, and this is where I went, and all the rest of it. And clearly that there are lots of ways that we should be doing more. Jack, can you just comment on, I'm just interested actually on that, because you commented briefly on it. Don't tell us all about Wales, but tell us in general, what is it that I mean, what sort of really do you think would change things at what age? Because I think it's just a useful thing, particularly for alumni to think of, because we will be coming back to you to ask for your help in many ways to move this forward.
So, I mean, using the specific example of Seren, it tends to feed in quite well with the more able and talented sort of streams in schools. So schools will identify their talented pupils who maybe...
At what age?
So Seren at the moment starts at year 9 now at its lowest level.
People saying it needs to start earlier on the chat.
And it's something that I've done myself. Is I've gone into my old primary school to talk about what I'm doing now, and I completely agree. But obviously there are practical considerations that have to come into it. That obviously, like Seren, for example, is a government program, so questions of funding, as with all public policy issues, do come into it. So it's a question of political will as much as it is practical implementation. And I suppose that's why the foundation years happened as well, as to maybe fill a public policy void maybe. But more relevantly, I think what we tend to do in Seren is take these pupils and we run courses on critical thinking skills and just those general sorts of skills to develop, but also showing this is Oxford and Cambridge, or this is university in general at a younger age. Because one of the notable things I found when I went to a primary school is a significant amount of kids don't even think they can go to university, let alone Cambridge University. So when you're dealing with that, going to any university is an achievement. So it's just planting those seeds early on and showing that it really is a viable path if they want it to be. And there's no material reason why it shouldn't be either.
Thank you. I'm going to take one final, because I'm conscious we've hit the time. I'm going to take one final sort of issue, which is about funding, actually. I'm going to come to Rod, because I noticed we've got our bursar on as well. So it's, I think a very fair question for you. How is this going to be funded at Fitz? And then if I could come to Sara in a more general sense, what happens at the end of the foundation year on funding? Will students get bursaries? Will they have to get loans? So I think if you could explain to people that it is what the shape of the year is in terms of funding, that would be helpful. First of all, in terms of Fitz, Rod.
Thanks, Sally. So look, I think it's fair to say that we have very ambitious plans to build on a really strong foundation that we have already. It's very clear we can't do that without resources, and resources mean money. So we are going to kind of reinvigorate our requests to people on this call and farther afield in terms of alumni, in terms of helping us achieve some of those ambitions over the course of the coming months and years. And I know that from the alumni I've spoken to, people are very keen to support us in this area, because it's something which is very much at our core. So we will, over the coming months, be reaching out to people to help us and support us in this goal.
Thank you, Rod. And Sara, the shape of the year and what happens at the end of it.
So at the end of it, we would assume and hope that the vast majority would go on to the tripos of their choice, and then they would actually go into student finance. So in the way that all students have to do for their degree. So yes, they would be taking out the loan or graduate tax, however you want to frame it. But I think there has been money raised to give them enhanced bursaries. Is that right, Alex?
So yeah, so they get, on the foundation year, they get the equivalent of what they would get if they were taking a student loan, but they don't have to take a student loan, so it doesn't affect their eligibility later on. And then they get the Cambridge bursary top up, which is basically up to, I think it's about 3,500, although I may not have got the exact number, on top of that as kind of an extra, because some of the living costs are higher in Cambridge, and to allow them to fully embrace the experience. So that's what they get on the foundation year. And then following the foundation year, yes, they will apply through student finance. They will get their tuition fee loan, and they will get a maintenance loan according to their kind of means testing. And then, as with all students at Cambridge, they're eligible for this Cambridge bursary that tops that up to allow them to have the best experience they can have here. So there isn't, within the kind of the foundation year budget, any plans to kind of continue funding them from the foundation year, because we feel that we have robust enough student support across the university that they fall into those categories in the future once they are, to all intents and purposes, Cambridge students, as with all others, regardless of the route that they came in by.
Thank you very much indeed. We are going to have to stop because we're past 7. Any questions, and I can see there's some on things like mature students. If you look at the link that Alex put on the chat, the information is there. But if anybody's got any specific issues they want to raise, I know she'll be very, very happy to deal with them, as of course will Sara and Robert in the future as we move forward. As you can see, we're very enthusiastic about this. And I really want to finish by thanking all of you for joining us tonight and listening to the outline plans at the moment. But thank you very much indeed for your interest and your support. Thank you. Good night.